Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here with another Options and Play video update. We are just a little bit over halfway through earnings season, and we've had some huge names, but we still have some huge names. We got volatility coming back, and just really setting up for what should be a pretty busy week. So, jumping into things here, as usual, Monday before the open, not really anything that interests me all that much. After the close Monday, though, Google. So about 67 points or so is what they're expecting on Google. And the last of the FANG names, most of the numbers have been very good in like the mega cap tech land. Mine is Facebook, obviously, and that's probably the closest comparison to Google of the bunch. So you can see, obviously, the stock is off its highs. But I guess I don't really like the setup as much, just because the options seem a little bit more on like the higher end versus what it typically moves. And to me, if it seems like the bigger move would be maybe to the downside if the numbers were weaker, which I feel like Google is typically pretty solid. So I just really don't like the setup as much. I thought Amazon was one of the best setups, if not the best setups of the Fangland, and Google. I mean, it'll certainly be interesting, but I don't think personally that I'm going to be involved with it. Also, Monday after the close, NXPI. So chip stock, 7.5 points is what's expected. A little bit more under the radar compared to some other semis, though. It's been steadily moving higher, retreated just the past couple days, like a lot of other things, though. And it's coming off of 3 solid quarters in a row. It's a little bit off its high, and I feel like maybe if they can deliver, maybe it can snap back pretty quick. So I'm bullish biased just based off like recent quarters in this, recent numbers in Chipland, and I like the fact that it's like rolled over about $10 off its high. So maybe like sentiment cooled off a bit, and if they can deliver, maybe some upside. So I might look at like some like bull spreads, or maybe even something like longer dated. Okay, before the open Tuesday, Ralph Lauren. So 875 is what's priced in on this. Typically a volatile retailer, and it's going to be the holiday quarter, so obviously that's like super important for that sector. It moved over 15 last quarter here, and then actually the last holiday quarter was another big mover. It moved about 14 then. So options priced in at 875. Moved 15 last quarter, moved 14 last holiday quarter. So, just based off that, they seem kind of underpriced to me. So, I look at like a volatility strategy. Royal Caribbean. I can say pretty frankly that I probably wouldn't be interested in this had the coronavirus not really started to really get kind of scary. And, a lot of things have been a lot of travel has been canceled, canceling cruise lines, different cruise ships. So the stock, similar to like the casinos and some other travel names, have really been hit pretty hard. And they're pricing in 7.5 on earnings. And I guess I'm wondering if bad news might be priced in here, like kind of similar to LVS, but also similar to LVS. I don't know if there's going to be a huge snapback right away until like the coronavirus is under control. So I feel like it might be set up more for like a bullish reversal strategy, but over a longer time frame, right? Like I don't think that there will be like a real serious snapback immediately, but maybe if you look out like 2 months, could be like a nice opportunity down here. Get the 200 day. After the close Tuesday, so the burrito king here, 54 to 55 ish, kind of what's priced in for Chipotle. Definitely one of the biggest point priced in moves of the week, and it hasn't had a big move on earnings since last February, actually. So way back here. Volatility's dried up a bit on this, and expectations seem very high. Options seem expensive, so I think I'm going to be avoiding this. All right, Clack. So another semi. There's still a bunch of semis I haven't reported. 10.5 points is what's priced in on Clack. I do feel like there's upside potential. I mean, you'll notice that some of these semis they've rolled over pretty quickly, just like over the past week, and I feel like that actually is better for like the bull side, right? Because things aren't overheated, they're not right at their 52-week high. Opportunities for snapbacks, right? So the numbers have been pretty good on Clack. And chart's been basing for like a couple months, right into some moving average support. Um, I guess 10.5 though seems a little bit higher, so we'd have to get risks down in some shape or form on that one. Also, Tuesday after the close, match. So 9 points is what's priced in. Those are monthly options though. And had a surprisingly bad quarter in November here. Came all the way back, almost put in a new high, and now it's rolled back down. So, I mean, like the chart is kind of weird to me. It's just like all over the place, and it's not really tight. Don't have a good read because it had a big beat and then a big miss. The stock is like all over the place, and I don't know. I just don't have a feel for it. I haven't really traded it much in the past, so I think I'm just going to leave it alone. STX, so another chip stock, rolling over to the 100A, and 4 points is what they're looking for. And I've been waiting for a big breakout on this for a while, and I still think that there's potential here. I mean, if you go back, like if I go back to like a weekly chart, you can see what I mean. I mean, I'm looking for like a move above the 60, and I mean, Western Digital's numbers were good. Stock wasn't like up. Actually, it's kind of like flirting with like being down, but I mean, it's like the numbers are still good. I'm expecting STX to be solid, and maybe if the market like firms up, like another chip name, maybe you get like a quick snapback, especially if they can really deliver like solid numbers and some upside. Snap. Speaking of snapping, Snap. So 225 is what's priced in here. Momentum is definitely back on this, and the chart looks interesting on the bull side to me because it's hanging out right under a pretty big level, so 20, right? So it's hanging out right underneath 20, and if they can really deliver and it gets through 20, there could be just more of like a significant pop on this, and it just I feel like options, they're not cheap, but I could also see this maybe moving like over like 3 points. Especially if it gets up to like retest like this early 2018 high, which is in like the mid 21 area. Also another big name Tuesday, Disney. So 6.5 points is what's priced in, and it is definitely coming off a strong quarter in November, but the stock has rolled over, and what's going to be even more important this time around is that they're going to have, it's like the first full quarter with Disney Plus, and it's going to really be all about the subscriber numbers, and plus any impact of the Shanghai Disney being closed, right? So, the way I look at this is I still think it's interesting from a longer term perspective and a more bullish bias, but I don't really know necessarily what to expect this week. Just based off the overall environment and again, like the fact that Shanghai Disney is closed because of the coronavirus. So I don't really know what to expect. I like it from a longer term perspective though, but definitely one of the big reports of the week. Wednesday before the open. All right, Merck. So we got a bunch of pharma and bios again. So 275 is what's priced in. This, along with a bunch of other pharma names, really rolled over in the last like 2 weeks or so. Merck back into kind of like this like 86, 87 resistance range from last year, so kind of rolling over to back test it. This was the leader before it rolled over, and the recent quarters have been pretty solid. So I feel like maybe you get a snapback. I mean, pharma definitely could be like kind of like a hiding place if things start to get kind of ugly. Get the dividend. You got some like stable names there, but Merck definitely one of the leaders. Spotify also Wednesday morning, 11.25 is what's priced in here, and I think this is a really interesting setup. Seems like they finally got some momentum from last quarter. It hasn't really acted particularly great like over the last couple months, but it has held on to majority of the gains. And I feel like if they can really put together like another good quarter, maybe people will finally start buying into the story. And what's interesting is if it can get like a technical break above 160, right? You can see how much that would open the chart up. So definitely one of the more interesting setups to me. After the close Wednesday, FireEye. So $1.40 is what's priced in here, and it seems like the only time this goes higher is off of M&A speculation and if the sector rallies, because then whenever they report, it just seems like it gets hit. It's like rinse and repeat over and over again every single quarter. It hasn't rewarded call buyers on earnings in over a year, and I've lost on it in the past, so I don't think I'm doing anything with this. All right, Grubhub also Wednesday after the close. So 7 points is what's priced in this quarter. We caught this big move when it got crushed last quarter, and to be honest, I am really surprised that it's come all the way back. It's still heavily shorted, and some of this M&A chatter is probably helping it out, even though the company's kind of like denied it. But I just don't think this setup is anywhere near as good as it was last quarter. And it seems like dips have been getting bought really, really fast on it. So I just think the options look expensive based on the pattern. iRobot, so another heavily shorted name. 8 points is what's priced in. It's usually a pretty volatile mover, and it's been basing for a few months in the 50 range. It seems like it could have a pretty big pent-up move either way. I mean, like 10 plus points. And I feel like it's interesting, but probably need to get the risk down. So maybe look at like spreads, like a strangle with like spreads on the other side or something along those lines. Peloton. Speaking of heavily shorted, 475 is what's priced in, and I think it's an interesting setup. I mean, just because of that super super high short interest, and it's a battleground name. Last quarter was decent. The numbers were decent, but it really wasn't much of a mover on the actual report. So this quarter is more of a wild card in the sense that it didn't really move much last quarter, but after like the run it's had, the way it's been acting, the fact that so many shares are short on this, it seems like it could be like a real big wild card. So it's more speculative, but it's also kind of interesting too. So I'm definitely gonna have this one on my watch next week. Qualcomm, big semi report. 525 is what they're expecting. It's been very, very choppy since last quarter. I mean, it beat and then it rolled all the way down, and then it came back and put a new high. And now it's rolled all the way back down. So it is coming off a strong quarter. So that gives me maybe a little bit more confidence in the bull side, especially because a lot of other chip stocks have had good quarters. But it just doesn't have any momentum. And I view this more as like a long-term idea because I just don't like the way it moves on like a week-to-week or like a monthly basis. So I think anything on this would have to be longer term. Twilio, so big software report. 1175, 11 and a half in that ballpark is what they're pricing in. It got crushed last quarter, and it took a while to get back to 100, but then basically once the calendar turned to January, it's just been like straight up. It's hanging above its 200A. But it doesn't have a good history of being rewarded on earnings. It's closed lower the last 4 quarters in a row actually. Excuse me, on earnings, closed lower February, then again in April, it closed lower in August, and then October. So it's closed red on earnings 4 quarters in a row. So I that to me is not very doesn't lead to a very compelling setup. So I'll probably just watch it, but I might hop into it pretty quickly after the numbers for a swing trade if it still looks good. All right, Thursday before the open, Bristol Myers, another pharma name. 2.5 points is what's priced in. Also been a leader, kind of like Merck, but it's dipped recently, hitting its 50-day. This was one we rode for a long while last year, and it had a fantastic run. And I still think earnings, if they're solid, and this starts to stabilize, like 70 could be in the cards. But again, that's like a longer term perspective. So maybe look at earnings as like a way to maybe look at something like longer, like 3, 4, 5 months out, and if earnings are good, maybe like kind of starts the ball rolling in that direction. Estee Lauder, so a retail report. 13.5 points is what's priced in. Those are monthly options, though. It's been a really solid retail name, and it just recently dipped. So kind of like a nice entry for a possible like snapback. I mean, I'd go with history because as you can see, I mean, like the last few quarters have been really, really solid on this. So I guess I'd be expecting more of the same. Another retailer, TPR. So this is the Coach Kate Spade merger company. So retail quarter, holiday quarter, right? Stock has been range bound for about 5 months, so it just looks like a really explosive setup, and the options appear underpriced to me at 2.5. Also, Thursday before the open is Twitter. So Twitter is priced in 3.5. It got absolutely demolished last quarter. It's bounced a little bit, but not much. And now you have Facebook had kind of like an ugly guide. So I feel like if Twitter is weak again, this could really be in trouble, especially if it loses 30, because there's really not much underneath it until like the mid 20s on Twitter. So I feel like it's more interesting from like a bearish perspective. All right. After the close Thursday, Activision. So actually, Activision, which is priced in at 375, and Take Two is actually also the same night, so 925. So go back to Activision for a sec. So EA kicked things off, kind of like a lackluster quarter. Activision, it looks a little bit more interesting to me, just because you can see like there's still like a really obvious gap, and the stock has been basing around 60. Um, but Take Two could be a little bit more explosive in the sense that you can see like it's kind of hanging out in the mid 120s, and if it can go like another like 10 points, it could really trigger a pretty significant breakout. So kind of like a cup and handle that's formed, like with 135, 137 being like the trigger. So Activision looks a little bit more interesting. Take Two a little bit more speculative, but also could be a little bit more explosive. That's how I look at those two. Baidu, 875 is what's priced in on this. So they absolutely crushed it last quarter, and the stock was acting great. But then, I mean, obviously the coronavirus has really taken a toll on some of these China names, and with that in the backdrop, I don't think it's like a smart idea to trade these at the moment. Because I'm just not sure that they're going to be rewarded on earnings until the whole virus issue has been managed or at least is under control. So I don't think I'm going to do anything with Baidu. And then it's kind of along the same lines. IQ is also Thursday after close, and it's the price in like $1.75, $1.80, and really like kind of like the same idea. Pinterest, another name Thursday. So 2.5 points was priced in. Options to me look like they might be underpriced though, because it seems like it has 3.5 either way, like to close the gap 3.5 or retest like the low from December. It's like 3.5, 4. So options are priced in 2.5. It seems like it has more than that either way. So maybe some sort of volatility strategy. Skechers. So this was like Mr. Consistent forever, and then last quarter it really didn't do anything at all. They're priced in 4.5, which is kind of in line with its average move over the past few years. But because last quarter was a dud, I guess I'm less confident in it. So I'm kind of on the fence. I've traded it in the past, and it might just be more of like a game time decision for me. Uber, big tech name. 3 points was priced in. The action has been like night and day from the end of 2019 into 2020. I mean, it's basically like stair stepping down, and now it's been like kind of straight up. So the thing with Uber is that the earnings have been like a negative catalyst for the stock the past 2 quarters, and it seems like it wants to go higher, but after like recent earnings history, like I'm just more cautious on it, and options in particular seem kind of expensive to me, just based off what it typically moves. So at the moment, I'm thinking I'm going to hold off, but maybe we'll see how the week goes, and I might change my mind on that one. And then last on Thursday is Win. So 975 is what's expected. LVS set the tone for casinos this past week, so I don't really know what else to expect from Win. It seems like the group is going to be out of play until the virus is under control, and earnings might just be more of a non-event, like kind of like how LVS's were. All right. Last but not least, Friday before the open, AbbVie. So another big pharma name. 325 is what's priced in. It's probably my least favorite though of the big pharma names reporting next week, because the Allergan deal still hasn't closed, and I prefer to avoid these merger stocks while the deal is still like not closed or in the process of closing, just because earnings typically aren't as volatile on them. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to avoid this one. All right. So as you can see, still a lot of really big names. So next week's going to be crazy. Volatility's back. in the middle of earnings season. Lots to look forward to. If you guys like these videos and you're looking for more option trade ideas or more option education, please follow up with the link in the description of the video for more information on options to play. All right? Have a fantastic weekend. Rest up, relax, and let's hope for some good trading next week.